Good evening, I'm Ralph Rennick. Dr. Johnny Jones took the helm of the Dade County Public Schools in May of this year. Montage wondered how the superintendent is handling the job of running the nation's fifth largest system. Ed Odell reports.
Total dedication is the aggregate terminology needed to describe Dr. Johnny L. Jones. The Dade County Public School System, its students, their education, the work of the faculty and administrators is the constant concern of this indomitable leader. An underlying aspect of the superintendent's character that fuels his dedication is interminable energy. Dr. Jones is a mover. He moves the system and the people in it on a course pre-designed by his personal force with the ease of an eloquent speaker manipulating an audience. Always resplendent in attire and personality, Dr. Jones is surely one of the most personable and accessible superintendents that the Dade County Public Schools has ever had. Much of the reason for his accessibility is his belief that public relations is a major part of the job.
I think that half of public education is selling to the public or communicating with the public what the role of public education and what it's doing about it. In this job, there's a great deal of it. Being new as a superintendent, number one, and even though I'm not new to Dade County, but being new as a superintendent where the buck stops right here, there's a lot to be communicated. And oftentimes I find that the problems that come forth, that end up in board meetings and sometimes in hot pieces of correspondence, letters and so forth, telegrams, calls, come about as a result of our not taking a positive thrust toward PR. We can't always assume that people are going to come to us except when there's a crisis or there's a problem. So we have to take an additional step and go one step beyond and contact the publics first where we can.
The soup, as he is affectionately called by his immediate subordinates, never stops. His workday begins at 8 a.m. and concludes some 12 hours later. A normal day is consumed by a series of meetings with everyone from his executive council to the faculty, principals, and students. On the Monday prior to the bi-monthly school board meetings, Dr. Jones meets with his executive council, comprised of the deputy superintendent, 3 associate superintendents, budget director, board attorney, personnel director, and other top management personnel, to go over each and every item that will be presented at that board meeting. This was my first contact with Dr. Jones. At first glance, his concern for detail and accuracy was in evidence. He questions every word written into each proposal and demanded that the members of this council be completely aware of each aspect of every item. He was forceful yet patient, knowledgeable but not omniscient. Impressively, the major concern of Dr. Jones was with the students. It always has been. Sensitivity is a virtue brought to the upper levels of the administration by Dr. Jones, even as deputy superintendent. The year prior to his acquiring that position, 153 students were expelled. The next year, that number dropped to 2. A year later, that number was non-existent. He does not believe in throwing a student away.
Do you think that the system really knows the child that it's educating?
Yes and no. I think the system overall perhaps has much to learn, especially in a place like Dade County. There are some people who've been to the well quite often and who perhaps know what they have to deal with.
What do you think you've brought to the school system as superintendent, even though you did work in it before in a management position?
Balance in the budget after having been assigned to the job on May 18th, a budget that left us some $25 million short as if we compared the 1977-78 level of funding to 1977, 76, 77. And then balancing the budget, we had to reorganize the system. And the way that I wanted to reorganize it was to make sure that that all communication would flow down to that classroom teacher and that child, which is the very purpose for our being here, educating the child. I tried to streamline some flow of information by realigning some offices and divisions where the public at least could see in looking at us that we did have an operation that was first clear, where they could make some contact and have an entree into the system.
Dr. Jones oftentimes personalizes communications by visiting schools and finding out firsthand the needs of teachers and principals. While there, he makes contact with students of all ages and talks to them about their work and schools. Further, he meets with school newspaper editors to familiarize them with developments within the system. The superintendent has put himself into a time-consuming, never-ending cycle, which he hopes will help bring forth a system to be proud of.
Do you have a specific formula for the integration of your social life in this massive school system that you're running?
Yes, I have to learn to say no. It's very difficult for me to say no. Someone needs some help, and if I can be a part of that. I know full well that for a system this massive, there has to be a delegation of responsibility to people that you can trust, to people who've been appointed to a position of authority and to carry out those responsibilities. There's no one man or one woman who can run a system this size single-handedly, nor would I ever try. I think sharing some of that responsibility becomes responsible on the part of any leader, like an executive. The main formula, I think, that I have, and this was not my own creation, is my wife.
Mattie Jones is the other half of the superintendent's life. When she feels that he has given an inordinate number of hours to the school system in a given day, she places what could be termed as a Johnny-come-home call to his private number. Dr. Jones likes his weekends to be free to spend with his beautiful and charming wife. Recently wed, they don't seem to have a lot of time together, as his weeknights are often consumed by speaking engagements, conference trips, and work brought home, though he tries to share all of these with Mattie. On a recent weekend spent in Miami, he and his wife took in a round of bowling on Saturday afternoon. Mattie Jones matches her husband in determination and competitiveness. That was further exemplified that evening at a football game pitting their alma maters. Dr. Jones is a graduate of Bethune-Cookman College, and Mattie matriculated Jackson State. Bethune-Cookman won. Sunday morning found them in religious services at the Church of the Open Door. That afternoon, the couple visited Dr. Jones' barber, Smitty, for an afternoon of billiards. Dr. Jones likes to win. Dr. Johnny L. Jones aspired to a career in writing when he entered college back in the early 1950s. His skill in that profession is exemplified by the number and quality of his contemporary presentations, one of which is a book entitled An Instructional Design for the Middle School Years. He received his doctorate in education from the University of Idaho, after which he began his long climb in the Dade County school system, handling positions of assistant principal, research coordinator, a director of secondary schools, an area superintendent, and deputy superintendent.
Have you been in this position long enough to get your feet firmly planted?
I think that I have my feet planted well enough, Ed, to have some idea about what we've done in the past. But what I need more time with, and I need more time to determine where we're going, and not where we come from, but where we're going, and how do we get there, and who are the people to get us there, and what are the critical issues that could cause us to break down on the way.
He writes in his philosophy of education that the best way to improve the learning of youngsters is to improve the teaching skills of the teacher and the administrative skills of those who administer the programs. Further, he writes, people, committed people, make things work. Dr. Johnny L. Jones is committed to education.
With the leadership of Dr. Jones and his staff, the school system should retain its image as being one of the nation's best.